Well, our streak of days with a high temperature of 11 degrees or colder ended yesterday. We made 10 straight days, which tied the all-time record for Madison. Yesterday's high was 17, not warm by any stretch. In fact, 14 degrees colder than our normal daily high at this time of year. But nonetheless, we broke our streak. But we are going to have probably the coldest February in I don't know how many years, maybe 50 or 60 years by the time this month is all over, because it's not going to really dramatically warm up. It's just going to finally get out of the teens by the time we get to probably the weekend. So here's the weather map for this morning across the country, and as you probably have heard, the news is dire around much of the United States, especially the south central plains. The state of Texas is in many areas is a disaster area. You'll notice down here in the southeast part of the state where Houston is, there's ice everywhere, northwest and slightly to the east of Houston into southwestern Louisiana. There's a mix of rain and ice right in the city itself today, but yesterday it was all ice or snow. There was snow in Dallas. There was snow in a lot of parts of Texas, and that snow is now spread northeastward towards all of Arkansas, all of Missouri, parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, and a little patch of snow on the border of Iowa and Minnesota. That's all on the western side of this giant surface high-pressure region, around which the flow is generally in a clockwise direction. And so over New England, the flow is from the north. It's cool there for sure today, cold day there. And then into the south central plains of the Mississippi Valley, the flow is coming back around from the southeast. So that becomes moisture-laden, yet the cold air is right near the ground, and so it's a widespread region of frozen precipitation over parts of the country that don't usually see it. So there's millions of people without power in Texas today. Temperatures have been in the teens in places like Houston and in Corpus Christi and other places that, routinely at this time of year, the daily high temperatures in Texas, in Dallas are in the high 50s. In Houston, they're in the low 60s. So this has been unbelievably difficult for people down there who have not, don't have an infrastructure for dealing with snow and ice, don't have an infrastructure in heating their homes or keeping them warm for situations that are this cold. So this is a really bad situation down for our fellow citizens in Texas. And to give you an idea what the temperatures are like down there, this is just from this morning, actually, at 7:30 a.m. local time. We're 32 degrees at Dallas, 31 at Houston. This is below 21 at Dallas. 32 at San Antonio, 31 at Houston. So this is way, way below zero. Look at the panhandle of Texas. Lubbock and Amarillo are in the single digits, and that's the case all the way across Kansas. It's 13 near Oklahoma City. It's 10 in St. Louis, minus 9 this morning in Madison, and minus 31 in International Falls. Remains a really super cold spot. And look at how cold it is in New England. Temperatures are in the teens and single digits up in Burlington. So widespread cold across the eastern half of the United States, eastern two-thirds really, and then warm only in the southern part of the Florida Peninsula. 58 at Tampa, 74 in Miami, 43 at Jacksonville. Gives you an idea. The cold air is not that far away. And it's cold in the Intermountain West as well. There's been a lot of news about avalanches. I gave you a little story about in Weather and History this morning about avalanches in Utah. There have been quite a number of avalanches in the high terrain of the Rockies in Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. And several people have died. And so avalanches are caused by a number of different circumstances, one of which can be recent heavy snowfall with little or no wind to pack it down. So the snow kind of sits a little bit more loosely, and then other conditions can be slight melting and so on. That's later in the year. But these avalanches were a result of brand new heavy snowfalls in the high terrain. Been a great ski season apparently for people out there, but they've all been forced into the backcountry to avoid crowds, and the backcountry is the most dangerous place for getting caught by surprise by an avalanche. So it's really bad situation there. So here's our desperately cold air, kind of centered almost over the western Great Lakes still. So we've been about the coldest spot on Earth, except for Antarctica, over the last 2 weeks, and that is maintained this morning, though we will have moderated temperatures during the day. So here's our satellite movie over the the continental United States and adjacent waters, and you can see storm system number 1 that gave some snow to New England late in the day on Monday and into Tuesday is now off the coast of the Canadian Maritime provinces. The weather that is so dangerous for parts of the south central plains is part of a system that's not particularly well organized. So that doesn't mean that it can't deliver an impact, as we're seeing, but it's not as well organized as the storm off to the east. But this widespread cloudiness makes its way all the way to northern Indiana, so not very far from us, but we're going to have a pretty sunny day today, it looks like, here in Madison. And then the widespread clouds, much of which are dropping precipitation over Arkansas, parts of Missouri, as well as Oklahoma. And then poor Texas on the backside of this disturbance in very, very cold air, and it's not going to moderate quickly for them. And we'll see on the West Coast that we have some active weather as well, but well offshore, and we'll see that in just a minute. Here's the radar across the continental 48 states, and you can see a little bit of shower activity along the central east coast of Florida, and that's maybe in advance of the spillage of cold air into the central part of the peninsula. That'll happen today. It'll get a little bit cooler there today. It's already 43 at Jacksonville, as I noted, and that's way below normal. And here's our precipitation over the central United States. And again, you can see in Missouri, parts of Arkansas, where it's only blue and green reflectivity, so the lowest levels of reflectivity. That's because it's snow in these places. And then down here over the border of Texas and Louisiana and Texarkana, you get into the reds, where this is probably either rain-coated snowflakes, rain-coated hailstones, or something like that, so there's higher reflectivity. But it's close to frozen there, too, and Houston, of course, is down here, experiencing more precipitation, but temperatures right around freezing, so desperate freezing rain conditions down over this part of the country today, and that is not good for travel. It's, in fact, the worst kind of winter weather that can be dished up, I think, in my opinion. So bad, bad news. The rest of the country, all the way out to the coast, little or no precipitation echoes anywhere, and so that's pretty good. So there's no new precipitation falling on the already snow-laden mountains of the Intermountain West. And then finally, the West Coast satellite image for today. At a less oblique angle. You can see here's a decent snowstorm, a decent weather system getting itself organized in the southern Gulf of Alaska, and so sort of right off the Washington coast. So as this thing starts to get better organized, as I say, you can kind of see the back edge of the cloud get very sharp, and that indicates there's an increasingly more defined line between where the air is rising, that's where the clouds are, and where the air is sinking, where the clouds are being eroded. And that's characteristic of a developing weather system of this nature. And so that's a clue that we can use to kind of see whether or not this thing is getting more or less intense with time. And right now, it appears to be getting more intense with time. And then if you go all the way down, remember where Hawaii is, down in this region of the map, and you can see clouds that we saw earlier this week and late last week kind of bountifully streaming from the tropics into the extratropics. That's not so much the case anymore. Now we've got more or less all of the extratropical, outside of the tropical flow, is contained in the extratropics now, and that's a little bit different from last week. So maybe we're having slightly less interaction between the tropics and the extratropics in the central Pacific Ocean, and that is a manifestation of a change in the circulation, and that change may in fact be a harbinger for things that may change around here, although not in the next few days. It's still going to stay pretty chilly. So that's the recap for this morning. The country has undergone a really ferocious winter attack in the last 5 to 7 days, and we've been the beneficiaries of that, or at the front edge of it, for longer than that. But the whole country has felt this winter blast in the last week, and so pretty unbelievable.